welcome. You're watching NewsX Deep Dive with me, Shivani Singh. Our focus today is the tragedy that has unfolded in Jorhat, Assam. An Indian Air Force AN-32 transport aircraft met with an accident at the Jorhat Air Force station while attempting to land. The aircraft reportedly caught fire after landing inside the airbase, prompting an immediate emergency response and firefighting operations at the site. The IAF has confirmed that 5 personnel were killed in the incident, and a court of inquiry has been ordered to determine the cause of the crash. The IAF has identified the personnel as Squadron Leader Prashant Singh, Flight Lieutenant Shubham Kumar, Sergeant Jitendra Sharma, Agniveer Vayu Khemaram Kumawat, and Agniveer Vayu Danish Alam. Only the co-pilot survived and is receiving medical treatment as the circumstances leading to the crash remain under investigation. Meanwhile, the tragedy has once again brought the focus to one of the Indian Air Force's most critical and most heavily worked aircraft fleets. The Jorhat crash is not merely about one aircraft. It is about the transport backbone of the Indian Air Force. This is about the aircraft that feeds India's most remote military outposts, a machine that keeps soldiers supplied in Siachen, in Ladakh, in Arunachal Pradesh, and along the line of actual control. And this is about the difficult balancing act between operational necessity and fleet aging. The Antonov AN-32 entered the Indian Air Force service in the mid-80s. Interestingly, the aircraft itself was developed specifically around Indian requirements. India needed an aircraft that could operate from short, rough airstrips at high altitudes and in extreme temperatures. Designed at the request of the Indian Air Force by the Antonov Design Bureau in Ukraine, which was the then Soviet Union, it remains a primary tactical airlifter for remote mountain and high altitude operations. The AN-32 was formally inducted into the IAF in 1984, and more than 4 decades later, the aircraft remains indispensable. India originally procured 125 of these Soviet-origin turboprops and today remains the world's largest operator of the AN-32. About 105 remain in active service. The number alone tells you the story. Despite the induction of the newer aircraft like the C-130J Super Hercules and the C-17 Globemaster III, the AN-32 continues to perform the bulk of tactical transport duties. Why? Because no other aircraft in the IAF inventory is available in such numbers. When most people think of air power, they think of fighter jets, Rafales, the Su-30 MKIs, Tejas. But militaries are not sustained by fighters. They are sustained by logistics. Every soldier stationed on a remote mountain post needs food, fuel, winter clothing, ammunition, medical supplies, and engineering equipment, and much of that reaches them by air. That's where the AN-32 comes in. Without these aircraft, sustaining troops in forward areas becomes significantly harder. Thus, strategically, it is just as important as fighter jets. And that brings us to Jorhat. Jorhat is not just another airbase, it is one of the IAF's most important gateways to the northeast. Aircraft operating from Jorhat support missions across Arunachal Pradesh and other frontier sectors. The AN-32 fleet stationed there routinely services advanced landing grounds close to the India-China border. That brings us to our focus for today. The AN-32 fleet was inducted beginning in the 1980s. Many airframes have therefore spent decades in service. To keep them operational, India undertook extensive upgrades, including avionics modernization and life extension programs. But even with upgrades, aging aircraft require increasing maintenance efforts. Spare parts become harder to source, maintenance cycles become longer, operational availability can decline, and every transport fleet commander faces the same dilemma. You need the aircraft every day. but the aircraft are also getting older every year. What happens if the AN-32 fleet shrinks? This is the real strategic question. Because replacing an AN-32 is not as simple as replacing a fighter aircraft. The AN-32 occupies a unique niche, and crucially it exists in large numbers. If dozens of AN-32s were suddenly withdrawn without replacement, the IAF's logistical capacity would be impacted. Forward deployments would become harder to sustain. Air maintenance missions would face pressure, and as would sortie rates to remote locations. The burden would shift to a much smaller fleet of larger transport aircraft, and that is neither economical nor operationally ideal. The IAF has long recognized the need for a medium transport replacement. The challenge is scale. Replacing a fleet of more than 100 aircraft is enormously expensive. It requires newer aircraft, training infrastructure, maintenance ecosystems, spare parts supply chains, and years of transition, which is why the AN-32 continues flying, because the aircraft still performs a mission that no other platform can fully absorb at present. Every military aviation force in the world faces a constant tension: operational readiness versus fleet fatigue. The AN-32 sits right at the center of that equation. For now, the nation mourns the loss of 5 air warriors who died in the line of duty at Jorhat. But as investigators begin their work, the crash has once again highlighted a larger reality. The AN-32 is not just another aircraft, it is the logistical lifeline of India's frontier deployments. It is the aircraft that connects remote outposts to the rest of the nation. It is the workhorse that has quietly sustained operations from the Himalayas to the northeast for more than 4 decades. And until a successor arrives in sufficient numbers, the Indian Air Force will continue to depend on it every single day. That is why the story of the Jorhat crash is not merely the story of one accident. It is also the story of an aging but indispensable fleet carrying one of the heaviest burdens in India's military aviation architecture. To discuss this further, joining us on the broadcast is Air Commodore Rana Sanjeev Mendiratta, who is a former IAF officer. I welcome you, sir, on this broadcast, and I want to understand from you, sir. Obviously, we've listed out how AN-32 was specifically made for our environment, how it is important. So do you believe now the time has come for India to expedite the C295s, the procurement of that, or in fact all the medium transport aircrafts that we are looking at, sir?
Hello Shivani, good evening. Like you rightly said, the workhorse of the Indian Air Force tactical operations is AN-32, and we had a large number of those aircraft. So they were working out a lot of roles in the Indian Air Force for the tactics and the operational parts, and especially in the mountainous regions of Arunachal Pradesh, J&K, as well as in the hot weathers also. So the replacement of AN-32, since it's already been there in the service for the last 4 to 5 decades, has been on, and the clearances has been sought. And you would be aware that very recently the Tata Advanced Electronics has conducted one test flight of C295, which is going to be assembled in India at Vadodara. So having that been successful, we are going to have 40 aircraft made in Vadodara, and about 16 would be coming from Spain. So this will initially help out the AN-32 fleet, which has been depleting over the last 4 to 5 decades. And this will look after those, because generally the class is the same. And we need an aircraft which can reach the remote places, look after the disaster management also, the operational roles of the Indian Air Force, and land at semi-prepared strips also, short runways also. So there is a lot of operational requirement for the Indian Air Force, for these kind of medium transport aeroplanes, which are tactically operational for our purpose. So as we understand, C295 will be joining us, but they are not one-to-one replacement for AN32. In fact, we had HS748, which is also slowly getting replaced, which was also transport aeroplane. So we are looking at either more numbers of the same aeroplane, or there are some more options from Embraer is giving one option. Airbus 400 is also another option which is being provided. And we have some more options from some other groups also. So I'm sure with C295s joining, and we have C130s, which also does a little bit of help to this fleet whenever there is requirement. So maybe we would require more of 130s also, and that's how the need is likely to be met. Yeah, Shivan.
All right, sir. Thank you so much for your valuable perspective on this issue. With that, viewers, we are slipping into a short commercial.